Well, thank y'all very much for coming. As you all know, we just completed the first week of session. Just some items that I'd like to hit today is talk about the budget, talk about standing committees, the bill deadline, and some tax reform. The budget of appropriations finished their public testimony this week, and we will begin moving forward, or the Appropriations Committee will be beginning moving forward with Chairman Fannin hearing bills Monday. I think if you listen to the public testimony, the citizens of Louisiana spoke loudly and passionately concerning the budget and the services that we provide. And we listened very, very carefully, and we'll be working hard on those issues. Standing committees began meeting this week, and they began hearing bills this week, and we'll actually start hearing bills on the floor Monday. The bill deadline is Wednesday, April the 17th at 6 p.m., and members can file an additional 5 bills that are within the scope of the fiscal session. The other issue, as many of us were surprised Monday, the governor's announcement that he was parking his tax reform bill. I personally think, and discussing with members of the House, that there's a strong support of doing away with the personal income tax. If we do away with it, it needs to be phased out over a number of years. There's several bills that are filed. We'll begin hearing those bills Monday. But let me be very, very clear. While I do support the elimination of the personal income tax, I think it's very, very important that we replace it with something, whether it's tax exemptions, whether it's cigarette tax increase, sales or tax increase, or whatever we find the money to replace the personal income tax. I've had discussions with members. We've talked about the 10-year phase out, phasing out a percentage every year, and as you phase it out, refill it with whether, like I said, either an exemption that you cap or you suspend or do away with. Some of the ideas that have been floated around is put the framework in place this year and put the parameters on what the bill would look like or how you would want to do it, and then make it effective in 2016. What that would do, that would give us the opportunity, that would give us 2 years to study it, 2 years to look at it, 2 years to look at the positives and the negatives of doing this. If you do a 10-year phase out, I think there's many positives. One of the positives, I believe, is that you can, if we hit a lean time or lean years, or we have an oil spill, or we have a FMAP reduction, or we have a hurricane, then we can take and suspend it for another year or 2 years. But I think there's you know, the governor, you've heard the House members, they've talked about independence. They talked about the opportunity for independence. They've talked about we need to be more independent. I think the governor opened the door for us to show our independence here in the House and do away with the personal income tax. Do away with the personal income tax in a very responsible and reasonable manner. And don't try to do it this year. Don't even try to do it next year. Let's phase it out over a number of years. And we've heard all the positives about elimination of income tax, all the good things that could happen in the state of Louisiana, but I think if we could phase it out over a number of years, that would be a good thing. Answer any questions. Oh, and also the other thing is, of course, I think I mentioned this, Ways and Means will begin hearing the tax bills Monday. So. I have said, and let me be clear on this, this has come up through that Walt and I are working on to give Board of Regents more authority to raise tuition to the Southern Regional average. And as you know, that as the tuition goes up, this pulls money out of our general fund, so from the TOPS program. So my concern is that we have to find a better way to manage TOPS. I've had discussions with Jim Purcell's at Regents. I've had other folks in here. I've had some higher ed people in here. And I think there's ways that we can manage TOPS that possibly would not require legislation. And if that's my direction. I don't think we should cap it. I think cap is probably too strong of a word, but I think we can find a better way to manage TOPS. And you know, we're still having those discussions right now internally, exactly what we feel like the best is. But I've had discussions with Jim Purcell's at Regents. Actually had Wade Smith from LSU Lab School came in here yesterday and gave me some ideas and some suggestions. So we're still have some discussions going on.
So you don't feel like you'd be at cross purposes with the governor if he is saying that he doesn't plan to sign any talks?
Well, I personally don't think it's going to take legislation. And I know what the governor's position has been over the years about TOPS. He's been very clear. But I think there's other ways we can do it and we can manage it.
The phase out, you're talking about 10 years, that's the preferred time, you think?
Well, Jim, I think it's a more manageable time. 10 years, we say 10 years is a long time. I've almost been here 10 years. And if we would have started this 10 years ago, it would have been about completely phased out. But I think it's we want to be responsible and we want to be reasonable. And we don't want to do it all at one time. I think if you phase it out over a 10-year period, that way if you hit a little bump and you say, well, wait a minute, let's suspend this for a year, then you'll have that ability to suspend it for a year. But I think it's the reasonable and responsible way to do it.
Are you concerned with indications from the governor's office that they would be okay with a plan that wasn't revenue neutral?
I've heard those concerns, but just to be realistic, I don't see that coming out of the House. I think that's going to be very hard to pass a piece of legislation out of the House that does not replace the money. That if you're going to suspend a piece or you're going to eliminate a piece of the personal income, from what I'm hearing from House members, that they want it replaced, whether it's a tax exemption or whatever, that they want it replaced.
There's also a series of education bills to chop up Act 1 and Act 2 that passed last year and pass them in more digestible parts, I guess you could say.
That's a good way to put it.
Kind of difficult to get out. Where do you stand on those bills and how feasible?
Well, and that's a great question. I've had meetings with John White. I've had meetings with members of the legislature that are carrying some of those bills. And there's a lot of internal discussions going on with Chairman Carter about what we can do to solve some of those issues that are in the court system right now. And I'm really not at liberty to discuss them any further at this point. I think, because I don't want to breach my discussions that I've had with some of the members. But I think we're in discussions now to resolve some of those issues.